AI Builder, welcome to this video. Today we are going to look at a key point for testing a market or a business idea. In fact, we are going to learn what is the customer acquisition cost, why it matters for your business, and what influences it, what to do if the CAC is too high, and of course, some CAC examples. This lesson works if you want to sell AI tools, software as a services, training, or anything else. In the last videos that I suggest you to watch if you haven't, we talked about 3 big questions. How big or urgent is the problem you solve? How large is your target market? And what price can you charge? And how flexible can that price be? Remember that all these points connect to each other. Never look at just one alone. So let's dive in. The fourth factor to consider when you are considering a business idea or a market is the customer acquisition cost, CAC. In marketing, we must pull new customers toward us and our product. To do this, of course, we spend money. This spend is our CAC. Think of CAC like an entry fee each customer costs the moment they walk through the door. If that fee is too high compared with what the customer will spend with you over time, the business will run into trouble really fast. Here is a simple formula to calculate the CAC. You just have to add marketing spend to sales spend and divide it by the new customers in the same time, okay, the number of the new customers. Marketing spend can be ad costs, events, agencies, tools, and even the marketing team salary. Instead, sales spend can be salesperson commissions, demo costs, trade shows, and etc. etc. Remember that it's important to compare the numbers between the same time blocks, like quarters. And, if you can, split by channel of acquisition, so you know which channels works well. Every channel has its own different customer acquisition cost, because every channel it's different when it comes to having a different pool of people and different type of functionalities, okay, we can say. A trade show lead can cost more than an ads lead, but the trade show buyer maybe spend 10 times more, so it's always a matter of quality also, okay, when it comes to understanding customer acquisition. And always compare customer acquisition cost with other numbers. First of all, the customer lifetime value. For example, if you know that a user will spend like 10K over his lifetime span in your software as a service, of course you can have a really high customer acquisition cost because the client that you will acquire, it's a high quality client and he will spend a lot more even if the CAC is high. Instead, if you sell a $4.97 monthly membership like Learn Old Okinawan Karate with Master Toyama, and the average user stays 2 years, so about $120 total, your customer acquisition cost cannot be more than about 20 to 40 euros, okay? In this example, if you just sell this membership, of course. So you always have to compare customer acquisition cost to customer lifetime value. In general, within a niche, customer acquisition costs increase as competitors increase. This occurs because more companies promote services to the same pool of people. Therefore, ads start to cost more, and being essentially auctions, of course, the price will tend to be higher. And even in the case of a direct outreach approach, people within the target segment will be increasingly bombarded with messages, and therefore the conversion rate will decrease, consequentially increasing the customer acquisition cost, okay? Another really important metric to take in your mind is that you have to think about the payback period, okay? That is to say, the time until you earn back your customer acquisition cost. Okay, getting ROI positive 30 days after signing a user, it's very different from waiting, let's say, 1 or 2 years. It changes everything because it will determine how quickly we can reinvest that budget into our business to get more customers. The longer the payback period, the more working capital you will need to survive and expand. If you go beyond several months or years, cash flow can become the true bottleneck of your company. Now, let's say that you know for a fact that your customer acquisition cost is too high, because maybe you have talked with some friends in the same niche. What are you going to do? Well, of course, working on processes can help reduce customer acquisition cost, especially if we know that we have a higher customer acquisition cost than the rest of the industry. But remember that it is always a number that has to be seen together with the quality of the customer generated. But if we want to start to dig into why you could have a high customer acquisition cost, let's have some easy questions to check. First of all, I would dig into the tactical part, okay? Do your landing pages and site load fast and work well? Is the funnel copy clear? Is the follow-up solid? Are the ads targeted right? Are your salespeople trained and converting? These are all metrics that I will go into more detail in another video, but obviously what I want to pass to you is that customer acquisition cost is influenced by all these things. For example, if a sales page converts at 3% and you tweak the copy to 4% conversion rate, your customer acquisition cost may drop by 25%, okay? It's pure math. Of course, partnerships and other acquisition channels can also greatly influence customer acquisition cost. Other factors that can influence that are, for example, market trends, obviously the niche in which we operate as I already mentioned, and two other factors not to be underestimated. First of all, the time of the year, therefore the season, holidays, etc., which can influence the demand and the cost of ads, for example. Secondly, the historical moment, okay? Wars, pandemics, etc., can heavily influence it. For example, incredibly, in the first month of COVID, the cost per potential customer via ads in various niches had decreased significantly because fewer people were sponsoring. Now, I want to talk about the most important concept of this video, so pay attention. The goal is not to drive customer acquisition cost as low as possible. Okay? Very low customer acquisition cost can bring low quality customers. And the real goal is to grow the lifetime value of the customer so that you can spend more on the customer acquisition cost, okay? That's the most important thing, because a lot of people focus too much on the lowering the customer acquisition cost, but it can't be lowered under a certain number, okay? So how can you raise your average lifetime value of the customer? First of all, rising the average order value. Secondly, rising the frequency within which they buy. Thirdly, raising the total number of the transactions, okay? And often, as we already talked in another video, by raising prices. All these will allow you to reinvest more money in the company to improve service, processes, and indeed acquire more customers or high-quality customers. So it's not a competition to see who has the lowest customer acquisition cost. Instead, it's about who then makes the customers more profitable, okay? Print this phrase because it's really important. To quote a mentor of mine, remember that in business, whoever is willing to spend more to acquire a customer wins. If you think that your CAC is okay and it's within the parameters you need to be profitable, then the bottleneck it could be elsewhere. Now let's discuss some hypothetical example. For a B2B software as a service product, you can expect to spend roughly, we can say, from $300 to $1,000 to land a single customer. In return, of course, each customer should generate about $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 dollars in their lifetime value. Instead, in a complete different business, like in a niche e-commerce store, a purchase driven by meta ads could cost like 20, 50, 60 euro, okay? Over time, that buyer should spend at least then 150 to like 300 with you at least, okay? So every niche and every channel of acquisitions has its own parameters, okay? Another completely different example. For a mobile app, B2C, every install might just cost you $1 to $4, okay? However, the average user will bring a lot less, like maybe 10 or 20 bucks overall, because the app is free to download and the revenue comes mostly from ads or in-app purchases. A quick note about the freemium model, which is to say you gift a free access to your software or to your service and then sell higher tiers of usability, okay? Freemium, it's a game for experts. If you are a small bootstrapped entrepreneur, it can be a great way to stay broke, okay? Because you spend to acquire customer without having certainty about the revenue. Now let's talk about the AI solutions market. In the case of a B2B software as a service, as already mentioned, you can also have a proportionately high customer acquisition cost, provided that your service is really useful and therefore that companies stays with you for a very long time. In this sense, we can say that you must have a churn rate certainly below 5% every month. Okay, for example, if you have 200 total active customers, at the end of the month, a maximum of 10 will have to drop your subscription. I would be more cautious with your estimations in the case of a B2C software as a service because it's easier for users to leave their subscriptions, okay? Because unlike a B2B software, where once inserted into the company processes, if it works, they will no longer operate without it, and it will be more difficult for them to change the service, okay? On the other hand, if you sell AI services, such as AI automations, agents, builders, and stuff like that, usually you will immediately charge a fee that will completely cover the acquisition cost to customer. So No worries. A solution that I often recommend to start is to do a hybrid between software and service. That is, start with an initial fee that covers at least all your costs, and why not make a good profit? Then have the monthly recurrence revenue that starts, okay? So basically, you will need to sell a service or a software, but with the component of initial consultancy or customization. For example, you can say the initial setup fee includes the customization of the software on your business processes and half-day training for your team. Here we have a deal for the first big transaction to exist. Within this configuration, you can close clients with the $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 fee that will give you immediate cash, and after that, recurring revenue. Well, in the next videos, we will address other factors to evaluate a market or a business idea, and that's all for this video.